Imagine you're, in the final round of a job interview. It's like this fantastic job.
Right, the absolute dream job.
Exactly. The one you've been dreaming about for years. But the interview is in English. The interviewer asks you a question, and you know the exact answer.
You have it perfectly formulated in your head.
Yes. Your brain is just full of these perfect, brilliant ideas in your native language. But then, you open your mouth to speak.
And everything simply stops.
Everything completely stops. You just freeze. The English words they literally disappear into thin air.
Like they were never there.
Right. You're sitting there looking at the interviewer, and your mind goes completely blank. Your heart starts beating faster, and you feel this sudden rush of heat to your face.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly frustrating feeling.
It really is. It is the absolute definition of a mental block. And if you're listening to this right now and nodding your head, well, you need to know that this happens to everyone.
Oh, for sure.
It's a documented, deeply studied psychological response. You aren't broken.
That's so important to hear. And today we're going to dive deep into a very specific trigger for that exact mental block. We're focusing on two small phrases in English.
Two phrases that look almost perfectly identical on paper.
Exactly. They share the same root words, but, they tell two completely different life stories.
Right. And today, we're pulling from a massive stack of sources for this. We're looking at cognitive linguistics research, behavioral studies from English classrooms, and real-world language immersion data.
That's a lot of great material.
It is. Our mission in this deep dive is to completely decode the phrase used to and the phrase be used to.
Just hearing those two phrases makes some learners panic. You see them written down on a piece of paper, and they really look like twins.
They do.
But if you use the wrong one in that job interview, or on a date, or even just in a casual conversation, you completely change the story you're trying to tell.
You really do. You might tell someone a story about your childhood when you actually meant to talk about your life today.
Which is super confusing for the person listening.
Absolutely. So that is exactly what we are going to clarify today. But we are not going to do it the traditional way.
No, we're totally throwing away the traditional rulebook because, let's be honest, grammar only really makes sense when it connects to real life.
Right.
We aren't going to give you some heavy lecture about past perfect continuous tense or whatever. Instead, we're just going to have a slow, natural, very relaxed conversation.
Because the research from our classroom data sources shows that learners absorb grammar much, much faster through storytelling than through memorization.
Stories are just how our brains work.
Exactly. So we're going to look at real human stories today.
So for you listening right now, whether you're driving or cooking or, just walking outside, here's our goal for you today.
Yeah.
Perfection is not the goal.
No, not at all.
You do not need to sound like a machine. Clarity is the goal. Comfort is the goal.
We want you to feel entirely comfortable, and we also invite you to actively participate in this deep dive.
Yes, please do.
Don't just listen passively in silence. When we give you a useful phrase, we want you to pause and actually repeat it out loud. Your mouth needs to physically practice these sounds.
All right, let's start right at the foundation. Let's decode the core difference between these two tricky phrases. But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here right from the beginning.
Please do. What's on your mind?
If these two concepts, like a dead past and a comfortable present, are so completely different, why on earth did the English language use the exact same root words for them?
It is a very fair question.
It feels like a trap. It feels like the language was specifically designed to make English learners fail. Why didn't English just invent two totally different words?
That is a brilliant question, and it's a frustration that shows up in all the linguistics data. To understand why English does this, we have to look briefly at the history of the word use.
Okay, take us back.
Well, originally, coming from its Latin roots, the concept of use wasn't just about utilizing a tool, like using a hammer.
Right.
It also meant a habit, a custom, or a continuous practice.
Oh, interesting. So historically, using something meant doing it over and over again until it became this deep habit.
Precisely. So both of these phrases, used to and be used to, are built on this ancient idea of habit and repetition. They share the exact same historical DNA.
Okay, I'm following you.
But over hundreds of years, the language basically split this DNA into two different directions. One direction points entirely backward to a habit that died.
A dead habit.
Yes. And the other points to the present, to a habit that survived and adapted.
Okay, that actually makes me feel a little better. It's not just a random trick to confuse people. It comes from the idea of habit.
Exactly.
So let's explore that first direction, the habit that died. The phrase is used to, followed by a simple base verb. Think of simple action words like play, live, work, or go.
Right. When we use this phrase used to, we are talking about a past situation. We're describing a reality that existed before.
Right.
But the absolute most critical part of this rule is this. It is finished. It is absolutely no longer true today.
I actually have a visual analogy for this. Thinking of used to is like looking at an old photograph in a dusty photo album.
Oh, I like that.
Imagine you open the book, you look at the picture, and you say, ah, yes, that happened. It's a memory. But you cannot step inside the photograph.
Because you can't live there anymore.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
over. The story's completely closed.
The old photograph is a perfect way to visualize it. Let's look at a simple real-world example to make this concrete for the listener.
Let's do it.
Imagine someone says, I used to live in a quiet village.
I used to live in a quiet village. Let's really paint the picture of this past. It's a memory. Maybe the village only had, like, one small bakery.
Right, very small.
Maybe the streets were completely empty after 8 o'clock at night. You could hear the wind in the trees. You knew the name of every single person who walked past your house.
It was peaceful.
It was peaceful. It was slow.
But because the speaker chose the words used to live, the cognitive linguistics data tells us that the listener's brain immediately processes a second to us of invisible information.
Oh, what's the invisible information?
The listener instantly knows that this quiet, peaceful life is finished. The old photograph is put away.
So without even saying it, the speaker is telling us that they do not live in that village anymore.
Exactly.
Where do they live now?
Well, the sentence naturally implies a dramatic contrast with today. Maybe today they live in a massive, crowded, chaotic city with 10 million people.
Wow, quite the change.
The village life is entirely gone. That's why they used to. It builds a wall between the past and the present.
So used to is the old photograph. Now let's look at the second phrase, the twin that causes all the confusion in those job interviews.
Yeah.
The phrase is be used to.
Yes. If used to is the closed book of the past, be used to is the comfortable reality of the present.
The comfortable present. I really like that framing. Let me offer another analogy here.
Go ahead.
If used to is the old photograph, be used to is like a brand new pair of heavy leather shoes.
Oh, this is a fantastic comparison. The behavioral data on physical adaptation lines up perfectly with this. Walk us through the shoe analogy.
Well, think about buying a pair of heavy, tough leather boots. On the very first day you wear them, how do they feel?
Usually terrible.
They are terrible. They hurt your feet. The leather is stiff. They rub against your heels and give you painful blisters. Every step you take, you're just thinking about how much your feet hurt.
You're acutely aware of them.
Yes. You complain about them to your friends. They feel completely unnatural on your body.
They're strange, foreign, and deeply uncomfortable. Your brain is constantly receiving pain signals from your feet.
Exactly. But what happens if you refuse to take them off? What if you wear them every single day for a month? You walk in the rain, you walk to work, climb stairs.
You force the adaptation.
Right. After a few weeks, the stiff leather begins to soften. It stretches. It slowly changes to fit the exact, unique shape of your foot. And suddenly, one morning, those same heavy boots feel perfectly comfortable. You put them on and you do not even think about them for the rest of the day.
And that biological and physical transformation from uncomfortable and strange to comfortable and completely normal, that is exactly what the phrase be used to means.
It's the softened boots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It describes a situation that was difficult or painful at first, but now, because of time and repetition, you've adapted. It feels perfectly normal to you today.
Let's analyze an example to see how this works mechanically. Let's go back to the person who moved from that quiet, warm village to the big, chaotic city.
Okay, the 10 million person city.
Right. Let's say the big city is freezing cold in the winter. Much, much colder than their old village. During their very first winter in the city, they are miserable.
They're shivering at the bus stop.
They hate stepping outside. They're constantly complaining.
That is the new shoe phase, the painful friction of change.
Yes. But 3 years later, they are talking to a friend from their old village. The friend asks, "How do you survive that terrible winter?" And the person smiles and says, "Honestly, I am used to the cold weather."
I am used to the cold weather. Notice that tiny, powerful auxiliary verb at the front of the phrase, am.
Yes, I am used to.
This means the psychological and physical adaptation is complete. The reality of the weather hasn't changed, the city is still freezing, but the person has
Like
changed.
bought a thicker coat.
Right. Their blood circulation adapted, they learned to walk faster. The cold weather is now just a normal, acceptable part of their comfortable present.
So to summarize the core difference for our listener before we move on, used to is my past life. It's the old photograph. It's over.
And be used to is my comfortable present. I survived the difficult change, and now it feels perfectly normal.
Precisely. Now, we promised in our mission statement to give you reusable spoken chunks today.
Yes, these are short phrases you can memorize.
Right. Chunks you can use confidently in your own daily conversations without having to think about the grammar. We want to give you real tools.
What's the first one?
Here is your very first spoken chunk. If you're ever in a situation where you need to explain a complex idea to someone, maybe at work or maybe helping a friend, you can start your explanation by saying, the simple way to think about it is.
That is a highly effective, natural way to introduce an explanation. It shows confidence.
It really does.
It tells the listener that you are in control of the conversation and that you're going to make things easy for them.
Let's practice this immediately. I'm going to say the chunk, and if you're listening, I want you to repeat it out loud wherever you are. Do not just think it, say it. Ready?
Go ahead.
The simple way to think about it is.
Excellent. You could use that right now in your own life. You could call a friend who is studying English and tell them, the simple way to think about it is, used to is an old memory, and be used to is my normal life today.
I love giving learners these practical tools because here is where the psychology gets really fascinating.
The grammar trap.
Yes. The tragedy of getting stuck in that grammar trap during a job interview is that it prevents you from sharing the most important parts of your human experience.
Even when they know the rules perfectly well on a written test.
Exactly. Even when they understand this rule perfectly in their heads, even when they know the difference between the photograph and the shoes, they still freeze.
This is a crucial area of study in cognitive linguistics. Why do learners panic?
It is so common. They panic because when they're speaking to a native speaker or sitting in front of a hiring manager, their brain is trying to read a textbook at the exact same time their mouth is trying to form sounds.
It's too much processing at once.
Right. They're thinking to themselves, okay, wait, is it past tense? Do I need the verb to be? Do I add ing to the verb? Is it to gerund? And the machine just breaks down.
To explain why this happens, we have to look at something called cognitive load theory.
Oh, cognitive load theory. Tell us about that.
Well, when a native speaker is looking right at you, waiting for you to answer, your brain goes into a state of high alert. It allocates roughly 80% of its energy to social survival.
Wow, 80%.
Yes, it is constantly asking, am I safe? Does this person judge me? Do I look stupid?
So if 80% of your brain energy is worried about looking foolish, you only have 20% left to calculate the English grammar.
Exactly. It's a massive mental traffic jam. Under that kind of stress, the brain simply cannot process complex auxiliary verbs in real time.
So it just drops them.
Yes, it drops the small, connecting words to save energy. It focuses entirely on the big vocabulary words and forgets the grammatical glue.
Let's do a mini role play to show exactly what this mental traffic jam sounds like. I'm going to play the role of a very nervous, very stressed English learner who's trying to explain the grammar rule to a classmate.
Okay, I am ready. Let's hear the panic.
Okay, here I go. Oh, the difference. Well, it's like one is past, right? And one is present continuous, I think, because it has ing at the end of the verb. And you need the auxiliary verb in front of it. And honestly, it's just very hard to remember.
We have all heard explanations exactly like that in ESL classrooms around the world.
It's painful to hear.
The learner is trying so hard to be grammatically accurate, trying to remember the labels, that they completely lose the actual message.
So how do we fix it?
Let me step in and upgrade this. I'm going to translate that panic into simpler, more natural English using a new target chunk.
Oh, I love chunks. Let's hear the calm upgrade.
Instead of panicking over the academic labels, I would take a breath and just say, let me give you a simple example. Used to is my old life. Be used to is my normal life today.
Wow. That is so much better. The energy is totally different.
It really shifts the focus.
Let me give you a simple example. That is another fantastic chunk for our listeners to write down and memorize.
It immediately calms the listener down, and more importantly, it calms the speaker down.
Because you aren't trying to be a textbook anymore.
Exactly. Saying, let me give you a simple example, gives your brain permission to stop reciting complex rules and start doing what human brains love to do. Tell a story.
Let's look at the mechanical fixes for some of the common mistakes that happen when people get caught in this cognitive traffic jam. We hear these specific mistakes constantly.
Let's break them down.
Okay, mistake number one. A learner wants to tell a story about how they are finally comfortable waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning for their new job. They say, I am used to wake up early.
I am used to wake up early. It sounds so incredibly close, doesn't it?
It does, but it's wrong.
It is slightly off mechanically. The correction here is about what exactly comes after the phrase. Let's look at the mechanics. Why does be used take an ing verb?
Yes, explain this. Why do we need the ing?
You have to think of the ing as a box. In English grammar, you cannot truly be comfortable with an action verb. You can only be comfortable with a thing, with an object.
A box.
When you add ing to the word wake, you are turning the action into a noun. You're putting the action into a box. Now it is an object you can hold and own. Waking up becomes a thing.
Oh, that is a massive insight.
Huh.
You cannot be accustomed to a verb. You can only be accustomed to a thing. So you have to say, I am used to waking up early.
Precisely. You need that ing box to turn the active movement into an experience that you have adapted to. Waking, cooking, living, driving, they all become things you possess.
Okay, let's look at mistake number 2. Let's flip the scenario entirely. The learner wants to talk about an old childhood habit, the old photograph.
Right, the past.
They want to say that in the past, when they were a child, they always woke up early for school, but they do not do that anymore. They say, I used to waking up early.
Again, very common when cognitive load is high. But if we are talking about the old photograph, the dead past habit, we do not need the box.
We drop the box
We
completely.
drop the ing. We just use the simple naked action word. I used to wake up early.
I used to wake. Simple. Clean. The action is over.
Yes. And now we arrive at mistake number 3, which the immersion data shows might be the most frequent mistake of all.
The big one.
The learner wants to say they are finally comfortable with the freezing winter weather in the city. They say, I used to the cold weather.
Oh, they forgot the glue. They dropped the M.
Exactly. Under stress, their brain dropped the tiny word that holds the entire comfortable present together, the be verb.
It just disappears.
Without am, is, or are, the sentence completely falls apart mechanically. You cannot just say, I used to the cold weather. You must say, I am used to the cold weather. Or, she is used to the cold weather.
Let me use another analogy here.
Yeah.
If you think of your sentence as a boat floating on a river, the word am, in I am used to, is the heavy metal anchor dropping down into the water, holding you perfectly still in the present moment.
I love that. The anchor.
If you forget the word am, if you just say I used to the cold weather, the anchor chain snaps. And without the anchor, the whole sentence drifts backward down the river into the past.
That is a brilliant mechanical metaphor. The am is the anchor to the present reality.
So if you're driving or doing dishes right now, I want to give you a spoken coaching moment. I want you to truly hear this. You do not need to sound perfect to say this well.
That is incredibly important.
Let me repeat that because it is so important. You do not need to sound perfect to communicate this effectively.
Explain what you mean by that, especially in the context of cognitive load.
I mean that English learners put so much toxic pressure on themselves to get every single syllable and every single grammar tag perfectly correct.
It creates so much anxiety.
It does. But human communication is about connection, not perfection. If you are telling a beautiful story, focus on the rhythm of the sentence. Focus on the emotion.
Right? The meaning.
If you forget to put the verb in the ing box once in a while, the sky will not fall. The native speaker will still understand your story. But if you practice speaking with rhythm and confidence, the grammar will eventually fix itself naturally.
That is deeply true. The behavioral data shows that confidence allows you to keep speaking, and speaking a lot is how your brain eventually automates the grammar.
So what does this all mean when we finally step out of the textbook and into the real world? The tragedy of the grammar trap is that it stops you from talking about human change.
Which is the most interesting topic of all.
Because this is where these two phrases truly shine. They are the vocabulary of life changes.
If we look at the psychological data, human life is essentially a constant series of adaptations. We're always moving forward, we change jobs, we move to new cities, we enter new relationships.
And to tell the profound story of a major life change, you absolutely need used to and be used to.
Let's start with a classic story of human adaptation. Moving from a quiet small town to a massive, noisy, aggressive city.
Oh, this is a great one.
Let's really explore the sensory details of this. Imagine a young woman named Maria. She grows up in a small town in the countryside where she knows everyone.
The streets are empty. There are green trees everywhere.
She has a deep biological connection to silence. Her nervous system is calibrated to peace.
Exactly. Her baseline is calm. So she gets a huge promotion at work, and she has to move to London or New York or Tokyo. She moves into a tiny apartment on a very busy avenue.
And the first week is an absolute sensory nightmare.
Her brain is being attacked by new information.
Yes, there are police sirens screaming at midnight. There are garbage trucks crashing loudly on the street at 4 in the morning.
She can hear her upstairs neighbors walking around in heavy shoes. She calls her mother and cries because she cannot sleep.
From a neurological perspective, her amygdala, the alarm system in her brain, is constantly firing. It hears the loud garbage truck and tells her body, "Danger, you are not safe."
This is the extreme version of the uncomfortable new shoe phase.
Absolutely.
But let's jump forward 2 years in the story. She's sitting in a little cafe on that exact same busy street with a friend. She's smiling. She's totally relaxed, reading a book.
And a fire truck drives by with its sirens absolutely screaming.
And she doesn't even blink. Her heart rate doesn't change. She just takes a slow sip of her coffee.
Her brain's alarm system finally realized that the noise is not a tiger trying to eat her, it is just traffic. The brain literally mutes the sound to save energy. The adaptation is complete.
She is physically adapted. Now, if Maria wants to describe her long journey to her friend, she will use our two target phrases. To talk about her peaceful childhood, the old photograph, she says, "I used to live in a quiet neighborhood."
I used to live in a quiet neighborhood. She is acknowledging her past reality.
But when her friend asks, "Does the crazy city noise bother you at night?" she just smiles and says, "No, I am used to the noise."
I am used to the noise. The heavy traffic is no longer a source of panic. It is just the normal background soundtrack of her daily life.
And notice that she didn't say, "I am used to hearing the noise."
Right, although she absolutely could, she just used the noun, the noise. That is perfectly natural and highly efficient.
Let's expand on this idea of adaptation with another major life change, the expat experience, moving to a completely different country.
This is something thousands of our listeners have experienced firsthand, or dream of experiencing one day.
It's arguably one of the most profound psychological shifts a human being can undergo. You aren't just changing your mailing address, you are changing your entire culture.
Your deeply ingrained social rules, your daily food, and most importantly, your language.
Let's imagine a man who moves from Rome, Italy, to Tokyo, Japan. In Italy, his entire life revolves around big, loud family dinners.
He's used to familiar Mediterranean ingredients.
He's used to speaking his native language passionately, using his hands to express emotion. And then she lands in Tokyo.
Every single sensory input is different. The unspoken social rules of politeness are entirely different. The flavors in the supermarket are completely foreign.
For the first 6 months, he feels terribly isolated. He goes to the grocery store and cannot read a single label. He doesn't know what is inside the packages.
He misses his mother's homemade pasta fiercely.
He misses the chaotic, loud streets of Rome. He feels like an alien dropped onto a new planet. During this very dark, difficult time, what is his reality?
His emotional reality is profound grief and homesickness. Years later, when he looks back on that painful transition period, he would look at that old mental photograph and say, "I used to miss my hometown every single day."
I used to miss my hometown every day. That old photograph is full of sadness, frustration, and a deep longing for what was easy. He missed his familiar traditions.
But humans are incredibly stubbornly resilient. What does the immersion data say happens to him after 5 full years living in Japan?
He builds a completely new life. He finds a local community. He discovers a favorite hidden ramen shop where the chef knows his name.
He learns how to navigate the incredibly complex subway system without even looking at a map.
He even starts bowing naturally when he says thank you, without thinking about it. The new country isn't strange or scary anymore. It has become his true second home.
So to describe his present reality, the anchor in the comfortable present, he says, "Now I am used to living there." Or simply, "I am used to the culture."
I'm used to living there. The cultural transition is complete. Let's look at one more deeply psychological example of a life change. This one is less about geography and more about personal bravery and identity.
Traveling alone.
Traveling alone. This is a wonderful example because it involves intentionally overcoming internal fear to build a new identity.
A lot of people are completely terrified of taking a trip entirely by themselves.
Let's say a woman decides she wants to backpack through South America alone. Before she leaves for the airport, she is paralyzed by anxiety.
She thinks, what if I get lost in a dangerous neighborhood? What if I can't read the bus signs? What if I get terribly lonely and have no one to talk to?
That is the fear of total self-reliance. the fear of the unknown.
Right. And to be honest, her first solo trip is very stressful. She makes mistakes. She gets on the wrong bus and ends up in the wrong town. She struggles to order food.
But the key is, she survives. And then the next year, she takes another solo trip. And another. 10 years later, she is a fiercely independent, confident world traveler who can navigate any city on Earth. How does she describe her past?
She looks back at that old, fearful, anxious version of herself, the girl crying at the bus station, and says, "Traveling alone used to feel scary."
It used to feel scary. The fear is completely gone. It's a closed book. The anxiety is dead.
And to describe her current state of deep confidence, she drops the anchor into the present and says, "I am used to exploring new places by myself."
I am used to exploring new places by myself. She has adapted to total independence. This shows real, earned personal growth. Okay, listener, if you're with us, it's time for an interactive cognitive exercise.
You aren't just going to listen passively, you are going to physically speak.
This is a crucial step in the learning process. Understanding the grammar stories intellectually is passive. Speaking the stories forces the brain to build the motor pathways. It is active.
I'm going to give you a chunk of English to start your sentence. I want you to summarize one of the major life stories we just talked about. Either Maria in the noisy city, the Italian expat in Japan, or the solo backpacker.
Start your sentence with this exact chunk. What that means in real life is.
What that means in real life is.
For example, if you chose the backpacker, you could say out loud, what that means in real life is, she used to be afraid of traveling, but now she is used to it. I'm going to give you 3 seconds right now, wherever you are. Speak a full sentence out loud using that chunk. Go. Excellent. The more you force your physical mouth to create these sounds, the faster the grammar moves from your conscious brain into automatic muscle memory.
That is a wonderful natural transition into the next area of our discussion, because big, dramatic life changes, like moving across the world to Tokyo, are obvious, loud examples of adaptation.
The fireworks.
Right, the fireworks. But what about the quiet things? What about the microscopic daily habits that actually shape our everyday lives?
Oh, this is so incredibly important. Big life changes are like the fireworks, but daily habits are the engine of our lives. These two phrases, used to and be used to, are absolutely essential for talking about our small routines and the body's natural biological rhythms.
Let's start with the most universal, deeply biological daily rhythm of all, waking up, the morning routine.
This is a classic story of human suffering and adaptation. Think back to when you were a university student. What was your sleep schedule like?
For most students, it is absolute biological chaos.
Studying late in the library, staying up, talking with friends in the dorms, maybe watching 3 movies in a row until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly, and then sleeping like a rock until noon the next day. So to describe that glorious, chaotic past, that old photograph of youth, we say, when I was a university student, I used to wake up very late.
I used to wake up very late. It was a strong, ingrained habit, but it belonged to a very specific, closed era of life.
Because what happens next in life? You graduate, you get a serious corporate job, and your new boss expects you sitting at your desk, fully awake at 8 o'clock in the morning, sharp.
The transition period is physically brutal on the body's circadian rhythm.
Oh, the first month is pure torture. The alarm clock rings at 6 in the morning, and your body physically rejects the very idea of getting out of bed.
It is dark and cold outside. You feel physically sick with exhaustion. You hit the snooze button 5 times.
This is the uncomfortable new shoes phase acting on your biology. Your body is fiercely fighting the new routine because it wants to stay in its old comfort zone.
But the human body is amazing. It is a machine built for adaptation. After 6 straight months of forcing yourself out of bed at 6 in the morning, a very strange thing happens.
You wake up at 5:58 a.m. automatically.
Your eyes just open before the alarm even rings. Your body has completely reprogrammed its internal clock.
The biological adaptation is complete. And to express this new biological reality, you drop the anchor into the present and say, now I am used to waking up at 6 in the morning.
I am used to waking up. It feels normal. It feels easy. You don't even think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at another daily habit that usually goes hand in hand with waking up early.
The coffee habit.
The coffee habit. What is fascinating here, from an evolutionary biology perspective, is how our physical taste buds change over time. Things we absolutely hated as children become things we cannot survive without as adults.
This is so true for coffee. Think about being 10 years old. You're sitting at the breakfast table. Your parents are drinking this dark, steaming, strange-smelling liquid.
You ask for a sip, They give you a tiny, tiny taste, and it's the most bitter, disgusting, terrible thing you have ever put in your mouth.
Yeah.
You think, why do adults drink hot dirt?
Evolutionary biologists tell us that children are wired to hate bitter tastes because, in nature, bitterness usually signals poison. It is a survival mechanism.
That makes perfect sense.
So as an adult looking back at that childhood memory of spitting out the coffee, you say, when I was younger, I used to hate coffee.
I used to hate coffee. A very strong negative feeling, completely trapped in the past photograph. But fast forward to today, you have that stressful corporate job. You have to wake up at 6 in the morning.
Suddenly, your brain realizes that this bitter poison actually gives you a massive burst of energy.
So you start drinking it. You start with a little milk and a lot of sugar to hide the bitterness. Then you move to just milk. Then eventually, black coffee.
Soon, the smell alone triggers a release of dopamine in your brain.
Eventually, you become one of those people who cannot even start a basic conversation in the morning until you've had a hot cup. It transforms from a poison into a daily necessity. So you tell your coworkers, I am used to starting my day with coffee.
I am used to starting my day. Notice the ing box verb there, starting. The action has become a concrete ritual that you own.
Let's explore another modern daily shift that involves environmental psychology. Working from home versus going to a physical office.
This is something millions of people around the world had to adapt to very suddenly a few years ago.
Yes, the great global shift to remote work. Think about the traditional office environment. From a sensory perspective, it is absolute overload.
Definitely. You walk in, the phones are ringing constantly, people are loudly chatting by the coffee machine, 50 keyboards are clicking at once.
Your manager is walking past your desk every 10 minutes to check on you. It is a vibrant, noisy, very public environment.
For decades, that was the standard definition of work. So someone reflecting on that era of their life would say, I used to work in a busy office every day.
I used to work in a busy office. That is the old reality.
Oof.
Then suddenly, the world changes. Everyone is told to stay home.
Suddenly, you're sitting at your kitchen table with a laptop. It is completely, totally silent. There is no one to talk to except your cat.
The behavioral data from that period shows that initially, people struggled deeply. They felt intensely isolated. They felt unmotivated without a manager watching them.
They didn't know how to separate their professional work life from their private home life because they were happening in the exact same room.
Yeah.
The transition was psychologically very difficult.
But, as always, human beings adapt. People slowly built proper home offices in their spare bedrooms. They created new morning routines to signal to their brain that it was time to work.
They learned how to use video calls effectively, and they started really enjoying the fact that they didn't have to sit in stressful traffic for an hour every morning.
The quiet isolation became comfortable independence.
Exactly. So now, when a friend asks if they want to go back to the busy, noisy corporate office, they reply firmly, no thanks, I'm used to working from home.
I'm used to working from home. They found their new comfort zone in a totally different environment.
Let's do one more daily habit example. This one is a huge milestone in growing up, cooking for oneself.
This is a classic psychological marker of adult independence. Think about living with your parents when you're a teenager. You come home from school or soccer practice, and dinner is just magically there.
You smell onions frying in the kitchen, you sit down at the table, and a hot plate of delicious food simply appears in front of you.
It is a profound luxury that you rarely appreciate until it is completely gone.
It is so true. So to describe that luxurious, easy past, you say, I used to eat food my parents cooked.
I used to eat food my parents cooked. A closed, warm chapter of childhood.
Then you move into your very first apartment alone, you open the refrigerator, and it's completely empty. There is no magic dinner appearing on the table.
If you do not cook, you do not eat. The first few months are a disaster. You burn your eggs, you set off the smoke alarm, you eat a lot of expensive takeout food, and you get very frustrated with the whole process.
The learning curve for cooking is very steep. It requires a lot of cognitive energy to time everything perfectly.
But you start watching videos online. You learn how to properly chop vegetables without cutting your fingers. You learn how to make a simple tomato sauce for pasta.
Slowly, the stress fades away. It actually becomes a relaxing end to your busy day. You put on some good music, chop garlic, and genuinely enjoy the process of creating something.
You've gained total independence and adapted to the responsibility of keeping yourself alive. So you drop the anchor into the present and proudly say, I am used to cooking for myself now.
I am used to cooking for myself. It's a very proud statement of present comfort.
Okay, before we move to the next deep psychological concept, we need to take a quick detour. We need to talk about pronunciation.
Because seeing these phrases written perfectly on a textbook page is very different from hearing them spoken quickly by a native speaker on the street.
This is a vital mechanical fluency tip. In natural, connected spoken English, the mouth wants to be efficient. We do not pronounce every single letter perfectly clearly. We take phonetic shortcuts to save energy.
Right, if you read the sentence like a robot pronouncing every letter perfectly, you would say, I used to hate coffee. But absolutely nobody talks like that in real life.
When native speakers say the phrase used to, the D sound at the end of used and the T sound at the very beginning of to crash into each other.
Because they are formed in the exact same part of the mouth, they blend together completely.
They melt into one single smooth sound. It doesn't sound like used to. It sounds like used to.
Yusta, it's much softer.
Used to. Let's do a quick shadowing exercise right now to build that physical pathway. Shadowing means I speak, and you try to mimic my exact rhythm and sound, like a shadow following a body.
Don't worry about perfect spelling in your head. Just focus on making the physical sound with your mouth.
This exercise builds incredible muscle memory in your motor cortex. It makes speaking physically easier over time.
I'm going to say 2 sentences. Repeat them out loud after me, focusing entirely on that smooth yusta sound. Here we go. First one, the old photograph. I used to hate coffee. Good. Let's try the second phrase, the comfortable present one. I'm used to the noise. I want the listener to notice how the host said I'm instead of I am. I'm used to the noise. Using contractions like I'm makes the speech flow even better. It reduces the mechanical friction.
Exactly. Clarity and a smooth, confident rhythm are so much more important than forcing a perfect textbook accent. If you say used to, you will instantly sound more relaxed and much more fluent.
Which brings us to a really profound philosophical part of our deep dive. We've talked about adapting to cold cities and bitter coffee and waking up early. But the most powerful application of these grammar phrases is not external. It is about internal change.
Yes, the inner psychological journey, and specifically the listener's own personal journey of learning the English language.
Because if we're honest, learning a language is one of the most intense, cognitively demanding adaptations a human being can go through in their adult life.
It requires immense vulnerability. You are essentially rewiring how your brain processes the entire world. You are learning a new way to label reality.
Think about the pure fear of speaking. Almost every single language learner on Earth has a traumatic story about this.
I want you, the listener, to pause and remember the very first time you had to speak English to a real native speaker, entirely outside of a safe classroom environment.
For most people, it's a truly terrifying, panic-inducing memory.
Your heart is racing in your chest, your palms are sweating. The native speaker asks you a very simple question, something like, how is your day going? And your brain completely shuts down.
The cognitive load is overwhelming. The words come out incredibly slowly. You're so intensely afraid of making a grammar mistake and looking stupid that you decide you'd rather just stay silent.
You avoid eye contact. You avoid social conversations completely.
The fear is literally paralyzing. But from a behavioral standpoint, it is a completely necessary stage of the learning process. It is the friction before the adaptation.
It's the ultimate uncomfortable new shoe.
Yeah.
So looking back at that early, terrifying stage of learning, a learner can look at that old photograph and honestly say, I used to feel very nervous when speaking English.
I used to feel very nervous. Acknowledging that past fear is highly important. It shows where your baseline started. It honors the struggle.
Now, think about the long, difficult journey from that terrified moment to where you are right now. You are listening to a highly complex, hour-long deep dive in English. You are actively trying to improve your cognitive understanding.
You've likely had hundreds, maybe thousands, of small, messy conversations since that first scary day.
You made countless mistakes. You used the wrong verb tense, you mispronounced words, and you survived every single one of them.
Exactly. You survived. The tiger didn't eat you. And slowly, over years, the fear started to shrink. You learn that people generally just want to communicate. They don't care if you forget a plural "es" at the end of a word.
The confidence grew through relentless, stubborn practice.
So a learner who has reached this stage of fluency can proudly drop the anchor into the present and say, now I'm used to speaking English with people from different countries.
Now I am used to speaking English. What a massive, profound achievement that single sentence represents. It means you took something terrifying, and through sheer willpower, repetition, and neuroplasticity, you made it completely normal.
Let's do another spoken coaching moment here. Often, when learners hit a plateau, they will express their deep frustration with language learning by saying something very simple and highly negative. They might just throw their hands up and say, "This topic is difficult."
This topic is difficult. It is an honest feeling, but it is a psychological dead end. It stops the conversation, and it stops the brain from looking for a solution. Let's upgrade that mindset.
Let's turn that defeated feeling into a smoother, more natural chunk of English that demonstrates a growth mindset.
Instead of just saying this topic is difficult, you can say, this topic feels difficult at first, but it becomes easier when you explain it with simple examples.
Let's break down the psychology of that chunk. This topic feels difficult at first. This safely acknowledges the struggle. It validates the painful, uncomfortable phase.
But it becomes easier when you explain it with simple examples. This shows hope. It shows that the brain believes adaptation is possible.
It completely changes the chemical energy of the sentence. It moves the speaker from a state of feeling defeated and helpless to a state of feeling capable and optimistic.
Let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture.
Yeah.
All of this raises an incredibly important philosophical question. Why do we even have these two separate grammar structures? Why does the grammar of adaptation even exist?
If we connect this back to the broader cognitive linguistics data, the concept of adaptation is at the absolute fundamental core of the human experience. These grammar structures, used to and be used to, exist because they are the grammar of human resilience.
The grammar of human resilience. I absolutely love that framing.
Think about it deeply. It's undeniable proof, baked directly into the DNA of the language itself, that no matter how hard or painful or strange something is at first, whether it's surviving a freezing winter, moving to a new continent, starting a demanding new career, or learning a complex new language, humans adapt.
We endure the pain and the friction. And what is utterly paralyzing, terrifying on day 1 becomes totally normal and boring on day 100. The language evolved to reflect our biological ability to survive and normalize massive change.
Language is just a mirror of how we survive. So when you confidently say, "I am used to it," you aren't just reciting a boring grammar rule to please an English teacher. You are declaring a massive personal victory.
You are looking at the world and saying, I survived the change and I won.
That is a deeply empowering way to look at vocabulary. It changes grammar from a list of rules into a record of your survival.
Okay, listener, if you are tracking with us, it is time for another spoken task. We're going to put all of this psychological theory into practice right now. I want you to think about your own personal journey with the English language.
Take a quiet moment to reflect on your actual progress. Think about where you started and where you are today.
I want you to explain your own English journey using the two structures we've explored in depth today. First, use I used to describe a specific past struggle, fear, or mistake. Then use now I am used to describe a present victory, a comfort level, or a skill you've mastered. I'm going to give you several seconds of total silence. Speak out loud to the audio. Be proud of your long journey. Go. Fantastic. Truly. Even if you stumbled over the words, even if your grammar wasn't absolutely perfect, the simple fact that you spoke the English words out loud means you are already adapting. You're building the bridge.
Physical action is what drives the neuroplastic adaptation. You cannot just think quietly about the language in your head. You have to physically produce the sounds to rewire the motor pathways in the brain.
Which brings us perfectly to the final, actionable phase of our conversation. Listening to us talk about the psychology of language is great. It is a fantastic first step. You've absorbed a massive amount of cognitive input today. You deeply understand the difference between the old photograph and the new shoes. You understand the anchor and the box.
But passive listening alone will never make you a fluent, confident speaker.
No, listening is safe, but speaking changes everything. You have to take this theoretical knowledge and forcefully inject it into your daily life. So we've designed a simple, calm, highly practical plan for you to follow over the next week. We called it the 7-Day Speaking Challenge. 7 days. Small, achievable steps every single day.
This specific sequence of tasks is designed based on behavioral data to move the information from passive understanding into active, confident, automatic use.
Exactly. Here is the daily plan. Day 1. Today. Your only job today is to listen to this entire conversation again from the beginning. But this time, don't worry about analyzing the grammar. Don't worry about taking furious notes. Just listen for the overall meaning. Let the natural rhythm and music of the spoken English flow over you.
Just absorb the stories. Let your brain's auditory processing center get comfortable with the pacing, the tone, and the justa pronunciation. This builds a foundation of familiarity.
Then, tomorrow, day 2. You're going to grab a physical pen and a piece of paper. Replay the deep dive and write down 8 useful chunks of English that you heard us say. Just 8 short phrases. Not single vocabulary words, but full chunks.
For example, you might physically write down, "A lot of learners get stuck here because," or the simple way to think about it is, the physical act of writing them down by hand activates a different part of the brain and physicalizes the memory consolidation process.
Day 3. This is the physical action day. You're going to take that piece of paper with those 8 chunks and you are going to shatter them out loud. Walk around your living room, look at the paper, and say the phrases. Try to match my exact rhythm. Try to use that smooth Usuta pronunciation we practiced earlier.
Don't just whisper them quietly to yourself. Speak with full, confident volume. Let your own ears hear your own voice making the natural sounds. This connects the vocal cords to the auditory cortex.
Day 4. No notes allowed. Put the piece of paper away in a drawer. Set a timer on your phone for exactly 2 minutes. For those 2 minutes, I want you to talk out loud about your daily routines. What did you used to do 5 years ago? What are you used to doing now? Talk to the wall, talk to the bathroom mirror. It does not matter. Just keep talking for 2 full minutes without stopping to read anything.
This specific exercise forces your brain to retrieve the grammar information under a little bit of time pressure. This simulates the cognitive load that happens in a real-world job interview or conversation.
Day 5. This one requires genuine bravery. You're going to open the voice memo app on your phone and record your own voice. Do the 2-minute speaking exercise again, but record it. Then press play and listen back to yourself.
We know from the data that this can be highly uncomfortable for people, but it is incredibly valuable for self-correction. Listen closely to where you hesitate. Listen to where you pause or panic. Don't judge yourself harshly. Just observe like a scientist. I stopped there because my brain was trying to remember to put the verb in the ing box.
Self-awareness is the absolute first step to fixing the mechanical problem. Now, day 6. Imagine you're the expert teacher. Imagine you have a friend who is totally confused about used to and be used to. I want you to retell the grammar rules to an imaginary person in the absolute simplest English possible.
Remember the chunk we used earlier? Let me give you a simple example. If you can teach the concept simply without using complex textbook labels, it means you have truly internalized the knowledge.
Finally, day 7. The big test of adaptation. Have a mini conversation. If you have a friend who speaks English, call them on the phone and try to use 3 of your memorized chunks naturally in the chat. If you do not have a practice partner, have a full 2-sided conversation with yourself. Ask yourself a complex question and answer it using the phrases.
I want to leave the listeners with a crucial paradigm-shifting reminder here. A massive amount of learners tell themselves, "I will finally speak when I feel perfectly confident." But the psychological data tells us that is entirely backwards. Confidence does not magically appear before you speak. Confidence grows after repeated use. You have to speak, you have to sound a little silly, you have to make mistakes, and you have to keep going in order to finally earn the comfort.
Yes. Action creates confidence. Confidence does not create action.
As we prepare to wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to ponder over the next week. We talked deeply about how this grammar is the grammar of human resilience. Language isn't just a cold set of arbitrary rules constructed by old academics to put in a dusty textbook. It is a living, breathing mirror of your personal evolution as a human being.
Every word you choose reflects who you are becoming.
Exactly. Every single time you construct a sentence and confidently declare, "I am used to," you aren't just passing a high school grammar test. You are actively, verbally celebrating a small, hard-won victory of adaptation. You are verbally confirming to the world that you survived a difficult change.
That is such a beautiful, powerful way to see language.
So my final provocative question for you to mull over this week is this. What is something you are deeply struggling with right now? What is the painful, uncomfortable new shoe in your life today? Maybe it's a stressful new job, a difficult university class, a new city, or just the daily frustration of learning complex English vocabulary. Whatever that current struggle is, can you close your eyes and imagine a future where you have totally adapted? What is the specific struggle right now that you will confidently say, "I'm used to," 1 year from today?
Wow. Truly think about that. What mountain will you conquer over the next year? This has been such a fantastic, deep journey today. We started by looking at the pure panic of a mental block. During an interview, we explored the dead, old photograph of past habits, and we learned how to walk comfortably in the new shoes of present routines. We looked at Maria in the noisy city, the Italian expat finding a home in Japan, and the immense courage it takes to learn English as an adult.
And hopefully, by exploring the psychology and the mechanics, we completely demystified these two tiny, incredibly powerful phrases.
I want to genuinely praise you, the listener, taking this much time out of your busy day to actively listen, to practice shadowing out loud, to engage with the cognitive exercises. That takes massive dedication. You are doing the hard, invisible work of adaptation right now.
You are physically building the neurological muscle memory for long-term fluency. Keep going. The adaptation is happening.
Keep taking those small, brave steps every day. If you enjoyed this deep dive, and you want more slow, natural conversations that explore the fascinating mechanics of English to help you build confidence without the textbook stress, please make sure to subscribe to English on Mic.
Your continuous support helps us dive into the research and create more content tailored exactly to what real learners need.
Leave a like on the video if you found the Justa pronunciation tip helpful, or if you're going to bravely try the 7-day speaking challenge this week. Remember, the ultimate goal is not to have a perfect, machine-like translation running in your head. The goal is to open your mouth, tell your unique human story, and trust that the grammar will follow. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We will be right here next time, ready to unpack another fascinating piece of the language puzzle. Until then, keep speaking, keep adapting, and take care.